Good evening. My name is Anthony Signoli. I have the extreme privilege of serving as MC for this very special dedication of Springfield's September 11th monument, honoring the 498 first responders who gave their lives on September 11th, 2001, in New York City, in Pennsylvania, and at the Pentagon. Tonight, here, we remember them all with this monument. This is a special place in this great city that is so much a part of our nation's history. We appreciate so many for coming from so very far. We recognize now just some of the dignitaries that are here with us this evening. Please, hold your applause until I recognize the last name. With us tonight, the Honorable Andrew H. Card, Jr., Chief of Staff to President George W. Bush. Mr. Bradley Blakeman, Deputy Assistant to President George W. Bush. Joseph Juergens, New York City Fire Department. Mr. Edward Setnar, Superintendent of Police, Director of Public Safety, Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. Mr. Bruce Stebbins, former City Councilor in Springfield and Massachusetts Gaming Commissioner. Deputy Inspector Kenneth Quick, New York City Police Department. Jan Seidler Ramirez, Executive Vice President of Collections and Chief Curator of the 9/11 Memorial and Museum. Deputy Chief Manuel De La Rosa, New York City Police Department, retired. Lieutenant John P. Madrick, Intelligence Division, New York City Police Department. Lieutenant Colonel Ivan De La Cruz, Intelligence Bureau, New York City Police Department. Sergeant Daniel Mendez, 104th Precinct, New York City Police Department. Sergeant Johnny Nunez, Leadership Training Section, New York City Police Department. Sergeant Tulio Serrata, Detective, Suffolk County Police Department. Alberto De La Rosa, Logistics Director, Global Alliance of Hispanic Law Enforcement, and Lieutenant Colonel in the Dominican Republic Fire Department. We'd also like to recognize and thank that there are so many representatives of the Global Alliance of Hispanic Law Enforcement Professionals here with us this evening. Thank you all for your service and for being here tonight to remember with us. Thank you. The Springfield September 11th Monument Committee did a remarkable job raising the private funds to build this remembrance. We introduce them now, and again I ask that you might hold your applause until I read the very last name. Mayor Domenic J. Sarno, our honorary chair. Commissioner Bernard J. Calvi, Fire Commissioner, Honorary Co-Chair. Acting Police Commissioner Cheryl C. Clapprood, Honorary Co-Chair. Mr. Frank Colicino, Fundraising Chair, the Colvest Group. If you want to get something done, call Frank Colicino. Matthew Bannister, People's Bank. Anthony Signoli, A.L. Signoli Company. Charlie Arment Trucking Incorporated. Sheila Doran, Columbia Gas, a NiSource company. Dennis Duquette, the Mass Mutual Foundation. Kyle Hauser, Valpak, Western Massachusetts. Chris Marion Photography. Paul Fanoff, St. Pierre Funeral Chapels. Mr. Paul Picnelli, Jason Rucker, MGM Springfield. Christopher Russell, Springfield Business Improvement District. And Chief Master Sergeant Mary Ann Waltz, 104th Fighter Wing at Barnes Air National Guard Base. Thank you all so very, very much. And before there was a committee, there was a dream. It was an idea. It was former Springfield Fire Chief and Fire Commissioner Gary Casanelli, who believed that Springfield could create a special 9/11 memorial for first responders. Chief Casanelli, along with former Springfield Police Chief and Commissioner William Fitchett, joined forces with Patrick Sullivan, the Executive Director of our Parks Department, Buildings and Management and Recreation, with Judy Matt, Executive Director of the Spirit of Springfield, and Lieutenant Dennis Ledger of the Springfield Fire Department. And they wrote letter after letter, made call after call over several years to get this artifact for this memorial. Their story, the story, is in your program, but they are here now, and we ask them to stand to receive our thanks. Please. He's co-chair of this committee. He's co-chair of everything in the city of Springfield. He's an amazing and energetic man. We were very, very, very lucky to have him as our mayor and as the co-chair of this effort. Ladies and gentlemen, joining us now with a very special welcome and message from the city of Springfield, the Honorable Domenic J. Sarno, Mayor of the city of Springfield. Domenic Sarno.
Good evening, everyone. And it is a beautiful, idyllic New England evening right here on the riverfront in Springfield, Massachusetts. To Andrew Card, Chief of Staff of President George W. Bush, to Mr. Blakeman, to General Driscoll, to Superintendent Sitnar from the Port Authority, to Fire Commissioner B. Calvi, to Police Commissioner Cheryl Clapprood, to Father Daly, to Father Hamilton, to all the honored dignitaries from near and far, and to the family members who were affected by this tragic event. Perfect timing, right during my remarks, right? Well, there are some that probably want to shut me up anyway, so.
And for those...
First of all, I want to thank the 9/11 committee chaired by Frank Colicino and all the generous benefactors, and Judy Matt, the Spirit of Springfield, and my Wizard of Oz, Pat Sullivan and Pete Garvey. Haven't they done a tremendous job with this monument? Let's give them a big round of applause. Very tastefully and respectfully done to honor the courageous individuals, our first responders. And I know many a times public servants, especially our first responders, take many slings and arrows. But I always remind everyone to never forget and always remember, when everybody else is running out of that building, they're running into that building to save lives and to save structures. Now tonight, we come together on a tragic event of 9/11. It was very surreal what had occurred. And I remember very distinctly the news clips and the Chief of Staff, Mr. Card, having to whisper in the President Bush's ear as he read to school children at a school, saying, "Mr. President, we're under attack." Though it was a traumatic and tragic day, America came together as one. And when you look at that situation, America continues to show and shine as the beacon of strength, the beacon of democracy, the beacon of hope around the world. And you fast forward a week to 10 days after this tragedy, and I always remember this commercial on TV. It showed any city or town in America. It could have been in Springfield on Dickinson Street. And it showed a row of houses. And maybe you saw one or two American flags. It showed with the date 9/12, 9/13, every house was lined with an American flag. My hope and prayer is that we can continue to come together as one during good times, not only during the bad times. But putting this monument here on the riverfront sends the message that we will always remember and never forget. Tonight, the names will be read. There are family members here tonight who lost loved ones. I'm honored to be here with my lovely wife, Carla, and our daughters Cassandra and Kiara, who will be reading some names. And I know it's a tough time for the family members that are here when they hear that name. But they live on. Their legacy is strong for every firefighter, every police officer, every first responder that goes out when that bell tolls to save lives and to save structures. So they will live on. So to everyone that has been involved in this, and to everyone who has taken the time to come down to the riverfront as we honor these brave individuals, I ask you to continue to stand proud, not only for yourself and your family and your community, but to stand proud for the United States of America and for all our first responders. Godspeed to them all and our military personnel who continue to keep us safe and sound. God bless you, God bless your families, and God bless our city of Springfield. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Mayor Sarno. Our next speaker was there with the president when our nation was attacked. He is here with us tonight. With special greetings, please welcome former Chief of Staff to President George W. Bush, the Honorable Secretary Andrew H. Card, Jr.
Reverend clergy and chaplains, Mr. Mayor, elected officials, policemen, firemen, EMTs, my great friend Brad Blakeman, Bruce Stebbins, Bernie Sweeney. I'm honored to be here. If I didn't know about it and I didn't come, I would feel terrible. September 11th, 2001 was an unbelievable day. You remember it when you woke up that morning. It was a perfect day. There was not a cloud in the sky in the lower 48. It was a perfect day. But it changed. It changed that day, and it changed that week. It changed that month. It changed that year. It changed an era. Yes, I delivered a message to the president. A message that no one would ever want to deliver to any president. And I did it in a classroom where the students were second graders. And they were innocent. The president had been told before he walked into the classroom that it appears a small twin-engine prop plane crashed into one of the towers at the World Trade Center in New York City. The principal of the school then opened the door to the classroom, and she and the president went into the classroom. When the door shut, a Navy captain by the name of Deb Lauer came up to me. She was the director of the White House Situation Room, the acting national security advisor on the trip. And she said to me, "Sir, it appears it was not a small twin-engine prop plane. It was a commercial jetliner." And I'll be honest with you, my mind flashed to the fear that the passengers on the plane must have had. They had to know it wasn't gaining altitude. I don't know why that's where my mind went, but that's where it went. But a nanosecond later, Captain Lauer came up to me and said, "Oh my God, another plane hit the other tower at the World Trade Center." My mind then flashed to three initials, UBL, Osama bin Laden. I knew about the attacks on the World Trade Center in 1993, February of 1993. I knew about Al-Qaeda. And I stood at that door and I performed a test that chiefs of staff have to perform all the time. Does the president need to know? This was an easy test to pass, yes. I made a conscious decision to pass on two facts and make one editorial comment. and to do nothing to invite a question or start a dialogue with the president. I knew that he was sitting in front of second graders, in front of a press pool, with probably a boom microphone hanging over his head. But I knew I had to tell him. I thought about what I would say, and I decided to say nothing that would invite a question or comment. And I opened the door and stepped into the classroom, and I came in from behind the president. He did not know that I had come into the room. The teacher of the school, the second graders, was conducting a dialogue between the students and the presidents. Say, "Good morning, Mr. President." "Good morning, Mr. President." And there was this dialogue back and forth. I didn't want to interrupt that. Ann Compton with ABC News, with the press pool, saw me, and she said, "What's up?" And I said, and she said, "What?" And then the teacher told the students to take out their books. And as they were reaching down to take out their books, My Pet Goat, to read with the president, I walked up to the president, and he did not know that I was coming to him. He never turned to me. And I leaned down and whispered into his right ear, "A second plane hit the second tower. America is under attack." That was all I said to him. I backed away from him so he couldn't ask me a question. I could see his head bobbing up and down. Then I went back to the door of the holding room. I looked again at the president. I could still see his head bobbing up and down. I saw those second graders completely engulfed in their books, ready to read. I saw the press pool. They'd all turned and were not looking at the president. They were talking to Ari Fleischer, the press secretary. In my left peripheral vision, I saw the Secretary of Education, Rod Page, and a White House staffer, Sandy Kress, and the principal of the school, kind of mouthing, "What's up?" I then went into the holding room. First thing I said was, "Get the FBI director on the phone, get a line open to the vice president, get a line open to the National Security Council. Get the crew back on Air Force One, we're going to have to leave." To the Secret Service, I said, "Get ready to depart." To Dan Bartlett, the communications director, I said, "Get some remarks written for the president. He'll have to speak to people who are in a gymnasium, and he cannot say anything we do not know to be the truth." The president came into the holding room. I was very impressed at how he did. He did nothing to introduce fear to those second graders. He did nothing to demonstrate fear to the media that would have translated to the satisfaction of the terrorists all around the world. And he also gave us time to be prepared to help him. I watched him be a real leader. You know that day. You probably know people who died that day on a plane, in a tower, at the Pentagon. I know you know people who ran in to rescue, did not get to run out. This is an important memorial. It's an important memorial because we promised never to forget. I'm going to close with this story, and this is an important story. It wasn't on camera. There were no photographers. It was on Friday, September 14th, 2001. The fog of war had kind of lifted. The president had a very busy day. I arrived early. He made a lot of decisions that were truly historic. But the end of the day at the White House was the beginning of a day that changed my life, because he went to New York City. And I remember when Air Force One landed at Lakehurst in Trenton, New Jersey. And we got off that 747. We were met by the governor of New York City, New York, and the mayor of New York City. We got on a helicopter, it became Marine One, and we flew out to the coast of New Jersey. And then we took a left and went up the coast, and the sky was eerie because there were no planes in the sky. No planes taking off from Newark or JFK or LaGuardia. And then all of a sudden, you saw her, and she was beautiful. The Statue of Liberty, the torch was glistening. And we're looking out the window of Marine One, and you see that torch, and you have so much pride. But then you see a pillar of smoke coming out of the tip of Manhattan. No one on the helicopter says a word. We circle the pillar of smoke twice, peering out the window. No one talks. We can see people around the edge of that black hole. We then land down by Wall Street. We pile into Suburbans and start driving through the streets of New York City. But the crowd that is gathered is very different. They're wearing hard hats. And I can hear the president talking to the Secret Service saying, "Stop the limo, I want to get out." And I can hear the Secret Service saying, "We don't want to stop the limo. These people haven't been through magnetometers." And he's saying, "I want to get out." And he does. There were tears and cheers. There was resolve and anger. People were chanting, "USA, USA." Then there's this crushed vehicle, a fire vehicle. And I said to the president, "Would you be willing to say anything?" And he said, "Do you think it's appropriate?" I said, "If you're comfortable doing it, is." And Karl Rove and Nina Bishop, somehow we find a bullhorn. The president says he's willing to do it. I go to the Secret Service, I said, "Can the president get up there?" And they say, "We don't know." They sent an agent up, he climbed up on that crushed vehicle, jumping up and down, gives the thumbs up. A firefighter by the name of Bob Beckwith is tasked to go up and hold the spot for the president. And then the president gets up and he puts his arm around Bob Beckwith. He starts to give a speech, and somebody yells out, "I can't hear you! I can't hear you!" And he says, "I can hear you, and the whole world will hear us." USA, USA is the chant. I see people hang off of scaffolding chanting, "USA, USA." They have Japanese flags on their uniforms. Search and rescue dogs, their handlers, are chanting "USA, USA." They have Canadian flags on their uniforms. We then go up to the Jacob Javits Center. The president goes to every unit that is getting ready to be the next deployed down to ground zero. They came from every state in the Union, 38 other countries. He thanks them for being there. He takes his picture with them. Then he goes to another part of the Jacob Javits Center, and he did not know we were going there. But it was a room made out of pipe and blue drape. Brad's seen it a million times. The limousine stops, the Secret Service opens the door, the president steps out. The advance man says to the president, "Mr. President, we've got a microphone and a podium set up at the front of this room. The thought is that you can go in and give some remarks for 5 or 10 minutes to the people who have gathered there." And the president said, "Well, who's there?" And I say, "It's members of the families of some of the firefighters and first responders at Ground Zero. And the president says, I am not going to the podium, I'm not giving a speech. And he barges into the room ahead of the Secret Service. Normally the Secret Service would walk in first and everybody would stand up. The president walked in first, and people didn't expect him. He greeted a woman right after he walked into the room, and she was teary but hopeful. My husband's a professional. He'll be okay. Saw somebody else. My daughter, she's trained for this. She'll make it out. My son, I can't think of anyone better to go in. He'll come out. There was great hope. There was great fear. There were tears. There was anger. A lot of prayers. The president went to every single person in that room. They didn't come to him. He went to them. He stayed there about an hour and a half. As he's getting ready to leave, he walks by a woman that was one of the first people he saw when he walked in the room. And she was about this tall, pretty stocky. And she came over to the president and she looked up at him and she said, Mr. President, I want you to have this. And she held out her hand. And the president held his hand out, and she said, this is my son's badge. His name is George Howard. Don't ever forget him. And she dropped the badge in the president's hand. Tears are streaming down the president's cheeks and everybody else's. I'll never forget what President Bush said to Mrs. Howard. Through the tears, he said, Mrs. Howard, America will forget. They'll start to move on. But you don't have to worry about me. I will never forget. And with tears streaming down his cheeks, he walks out. Tears are streaming down my cheeks. We get into the limousine. I'm sitting right beside the president. He reaches into his pocket as we're sitting in the back seat of the limousine. He pulls out the badge and he looks at it. It was badge number 1012. He shuts his eyes. I believe he's praying. Then he opens his eyes and he squeezes the badge and with a whisper says, I will never forget. He put the badge back in his pocket. Doesn't say another word. We get to the landing zone where the helicopter is, and the president goes over and thanks the police and firemen. They're there protecting the helicopter. The staff gets on the helicopter. Then we fly all the way back to Lakehurst. No one says a word the entire flight. The president and I then get on a small plane that becomes Air Force One as soon as the president gets on it. And we fly to Hagerstown, Maryland to go to Camp David. The rest of the staff gets on that 747 and they fly to Washington, D.C. I'll never forget that day because I watched a president do everything a president needs to do any time, and he did it all in one day. But the most important thing he did was promise never to forget. I see this wall and I see names on it. There's a connection to every name that's on that wall. They can't forget. They move on, but they don't forget. But the names on that wall mean something. They give definition to service, to sacrifice. They give definition to community. They give definition to a calling. Those of you who wear a uniform and took an oath, they give definition. They give a definition to sacrifice. They give a definition to America. George Howard's name is up there. George Gerard Howard. The president will never forget. I hope you never forget. Remember, those who have graduated from high school this year were not born when this happened. They don't know they should never forget because they don't know. This memorial guarantees that they will have a chance to know. Therefore, we hope they will never forget, because our future depends on them too. Thank you. God bless Springfield. God bless the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and God bless America. Thank you.
Wow. You just listened to history from a man who's part of America's history. And what's amazing to me, and I know most of you noticed it, he didn't have a single note to read from. Every word from his heart. We cannot thank you enough, Mr. Secretary. Thank you, sir. It was the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey that honored Springfield with this iconic artifact. Please welcome Edward Setnar, Superintendent of Police and Director of Public Safety for the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey.
Good evening, everyone. Let me start off by saying that you never want to follow the guy in front of you. And Mr. Card, I don't know how I topped that, but thank you very much. That was wonderful. The story he told about Mrs. Howard, and I know the chief knows this, but she passed away about 2 months ago, and we laid her to rest. And I can tell you this, that the president was in touch with her all the time, and she was a tireless advocate for 9/11 and the remembrance of her son. So the tribute that President Bush and his staff gave Mrs. Howard was a lasting memory. And on that day, September 11th, I was a young New Jersey State Trooper, and I was assigned to Ground Zero right away. On the 14th, when Chief Card said they came into Lakehurst, I was part of the motorcade and the SWAT team that had to go there, so we were back and forth. So everything he's talking about gives me chills because I remember it so vividly and what we did as troopers that day. But, Mayor, I can't thank you enough. You know, when I got the letter to come up here as part of the Port Authority and you honoring the folks, the first responders, my answer was immediately yes. And I can't thank you enough for honoring all the men and women, whether it's NYPD, Port Authority, FDNY, and the other first responders. It is a very, very great tribute to the folks that do this every day, and I can't thank you and your staff enough. Judith, thank you very much for the communication and getting us up here. We really appreciate it. You know, on the ride here today, it took us about 3 hours to get here from the city. You know, these are the things that we talk about and remember. And I actually said to Chief Card before that this morning, National Geographic was the interview with himself and President Bush, and it just happened. I see that this morning while I'm getting dressed. I'm like, again, how ironic. And I believe it was probably Mrs. Howard with the train going by as you were speaking about her, acknowledging that she's still here. So, in any event, This is a great tribute, an artifact from the World Trade Center that me now, the head of the Port Authority Police Department, over 2,200 members, men and women that go out there and protect our facilities each and every day, from the airports to the new Freedom Tower, the campus around that, our bridges, our tunnels, our bus terminals, our PATH train system. It is a backdrop of a lot of facilities in New York City. And while we work with the NYPD very closely to secure these facilities, I got to say that there's no greater threat probably from a terrorist that wants to put a symbol back into New York. And I think between all the New York Police Department and the Port Authority men and women, I think we do a tremendous job protecting those structures. I just want to close with this. I have here an American flag. I'd like to present this to the mayor. This American flag was proudly flown over the World Trade Center on June 5th when I got the invitation to come here. We flew this over the World Trade Center, and we give this to very special people and under very, very special circumstances. This is a very special person, your mayor, and the circumstances of this wall being built is a true honor for me to present this American flag that was flown over the World Trade Center site to symbolize the remembrance of all our first responders and all the folks that lost their life that day. And as Chief Card said and the mayor said, we will never forget. That is something that is instilled to my police officers from day one. You will never forget, and don't ever embarrass the memory of the folks that gave their life that day. Mr. Mayor, please accept this on behalf of Governor Cuomo, Governor Murphy, and the men and women of the Port Authority. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And now, with the Special Armed Services Remembrance, we welcome Brigadier General John Driscoll, Commander of the Massachusetts Army National Guard.
Well, thank you very much. And for all those who've been veterans, you know, when a general shows up without notes, it's going to be a long time. And Judy Matt says, you have 2 minutes. I'm like, okay, Judy, I'm going to double it and take 4. But good evening, distinguished guests, Mr. Card, Mayor Sarno, and all veterans, ladies and gentlemen, first responders, and loved ones of the fallen. Thank you for the honor to be part of this solemn dedication and to say a few words. I echo the earlier comments and recognize the efforts behind this dedication to our first responders. I pause and reflect on what I'm going to say tonight, and I experience a range of emotions, and I thought to share them with you as possibly one or more may hold the same in your heart. The first thing, you heard it before, is thankfulness and pride. Thank you for everyone here today because you gave up your most precious asset, your time. You came here tonight to show respect for the fallen. Boy, that Mrs. Howard gets around. I didn't think she liked that comment. That's why. One more. Okay, so thankfulness and pride. And I share with you my pride to be here also as a resident of Springfield and as a commander of the Massachusetts Army National Guard, and to still wear this uniform as a citizen soldier in defense of our great land. Sorrow. Sorrow for our first responders, fellow service members, and their families who hold dear memories of loved ones who left and never returned, or who returned not the same with a physical, mental, or emotional wound. Sadness. For this monument is not finite, and it has no end in sight, and I really wish it did. It is a somber reminder of that tragic day in America and conveys the beginning of a long war of ideas that we are still engaged in. This September marked 18 years since 9/11 permanently altered our way of life that still affects us today. Being American, whether living here or abroad, exposes all of us in this global war on terror. Terrorism spews from the evil hearts of men that crave power, disregard human life and dignity, and hate our American ideals of freedom and liberty for all. if one stops and dwells on this, it's overwhelming. For the evil that men do lives after them, while the good is often interred with their bones, as William Shakespeare said. But optimism. I am optimistic because I know America will prevail, because America is America. America is an idea, not just a place. It is an expression of the hopes and dreams for a better life, a fulfillment for a quest for ultimate safety, prosperity, and liberty. America is not just a place for Americans, but as Ronald Reagan so aptly put it when borrowing from our first governor, John Winthrop, a shining city upon a hill for the entire world. The power of the United States comes from many sources, but more than anything else, it comes from the strength of the American idea. Living our lives with freedom and liberty is an anathema to all those who commit terror. They both fear and hate this notion. Terrorists cannot compete on ideas and use violence and intimidation, striking against those who are the mostly innocent civilians, to instill fear and sow doubt. I stand as a commander of the 6,000 Massachusetts Army National Guard soldiers who train to ensure this does not happen again. And in tandem with our first responders, as seen in Boston in 2013, where innocent people are subjected to terrorism, our first responders run in to place themselves in harm's way, to render care, to preserve life, protect, and serve. After each attack, whether in America or across the world, people return to their way of life to live. It highlights how terrorists and their tactics fail and discredits their ideology. Thank you again for this monument. It stands as an enduring reminder that America and its ideals are worth fighting for. The world is a dangerous place, and we have many men and women here and abroad to defend our American ideals against the evils of terrorism. I echo my optimism that I have enduring faith in our people, our government, our civic organizations, and most importantly, our way of life. We will prevail in this global war on terror on the American ideal. Despite more heartaches of pain and sorrow, American freedom and liberty cannot be intimidated. It resonates deeply throughout this great republic in the hearts and minds of our citizens. This monument will be a beacon for all who desire life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Thank you, and may God bless you and our United States of America.
Thank you. Please welcome Springfield Fire Commissioner B. Calvi with the Firefighters' Remembrance.
Good evening, and welcome to this beautiful monument. I was honored right after I took the job in Springfield to be contacted by Judy Matt and asked to serve as an honorary chairman for the fundraising for this committee. I, without a doubt, jumped right in and said I would be happy to lend my name and whatever efforts I could lend to this monument. But I'm also honored to stand before you tonight to welcome you to this monument on behalf of the men and women of the Springfield Fire Department and offer you our sincere gratitude for all of you that have come this evening and all of the invited dignitaries and guests who are here to pay tribute to the brave firefighters and police officers, as well as the EMTs who paid the ultimate sacrifice on that day. In the fire service, words like duty, honor, integrity are not buzzwords. We take those words very seriously, and those are what we live by. We all go to work 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, doing the job that we all love to do. The members of the FDNY on September 11th, 2001 went to work like we all do every day of the week, checked in, put their gear on the apparatus. Most of them are probably having roll call or sitting down to have breakfast, having coffee, getting ready for the day, doing equipment checks, when the bell hit for an alarm of fire at the World Trade Center. The response time for the first companies to the World Trade Center was 5 seconds. Companies were already out in the street doing a gas call, as many of you have seen on National Geographic, and Engine 10, Truck 10 are located right across the street from Ground Zero. So they were right there when the planes hit. Members of the FDNY and the NYPD, as well as Port Authority, did not hesitate. They all began running into the building to ensure that everyone could get out. Thousands of lives were saved that day by the efforts of firefighters of the City of New York, police officers of the NYPD, as well as the Port Authority, ensuring that everyone got out of those buildings, or as many as they could get out, without regard to their own safety knowing that when they went up those stairs, many of them would not come back out that day. So, September 11, 2001 started around here like any other day. I was going to work that day. I was working on a paramedic unit that day, and we had just finished a run. We were back in the truck going back to the station, and it came in that a plane had hit the World Trade Center. So tuned the radio to listen to what was going on, and then a report of a second plane hit. So we were coming back from Bay State. I was working on a paramedic unit in Holyoke that day part-time. We pulled into the Chicopee Fire Station, Station 3, and ran right in, and they already had it on the television set. And we got in to see the first tower collapse, and we were watching, and everybody's trying to figure out if there was that much smoke that they couldn't see the first tower. And I said, no, I think it's gone. And everybody got an immediate lump in their throat as we watched the dust settle along the city of New York and the borough of Manhattan. And that is something I'll never forget, because when that building came down, I understood that hundreds of firefighters and police officers had probably lost their lives. So I can guarantee you that I will never forget that day, and I will never forget the names on this wall. Again, thank you all for coming, and my deepest regards. Thank you very much.
And now, with the police officers' remembrance, we welcome Acting Springfield Police Commissioner Cheryl Clapprood.
Good evening. I'm shorter than the average. Honored and distinguished guests, I welcome all of you in law enforcement and public safety who have traveled far to be with us tonight in Springfield. There are so many of you, I wish I had time to recognize every one of your service. But please know that your presence with us tonight, remembering our sisters and brothers who gave their lives that day, is a deep honor. As Police Commissioner, on behalf of the Springfield Police Department, I welcome you to the City of Springfield for this dedication. To those first responders who died, to those that we remembered who were injured, and to this day still suffer from the effects of the tragedy, September 11th, 2001. As a law enforcement officer for 40 years, I am still in awe of their courage and sacrifice. The first responders displayed tremendous courage on that day. Everyone who takes an oath to serve and protect knows that day may come where you are faced with life and death situations. Yeah, we feared that day, as those must have, but we hope we are able to face the fear and continue on to save as many lives as possible. That's what those first responders dealt with, and with courage and professionalism as they fought back the fear, they continued to save lives. It makes me proud today as I look back. So many acts of heroism, so many acts of selfless devotion to duty, so many who gave their lives trying to save others and just doing their jobs. I hope this monument serves to remind us all of their sacrifice. May it also serve to remind everyone who visits that those first responders who serve you today are still well aware of the risks and dangers that may lie ahead. But we are willing to be courageous as those on 9/11 and give the ultimate sacrifice to save others and be brave in the face of such tragedy. I am proud of the mayor of our city and his leadership. I am proud of the Springfield Police and Fire Departments, proud of our medical first responders. And although we have faced tragedies on a smaller scale, we have always answered the call to duty, and we will continue to do so. It's inside of all of us to bring out the best when the worst has struck. We will do this today, we will do it tomorrow, and always in the memory of the heroes that fell before us. I am humbled by their valor. I am honored by their sacrifice, and I am privileged to carry on as a first responder in their memory. Thank you for being here. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Clapprood. And now, with greetings from Salman Studios, the folks who designed this monument, please welcome designer Sam Ostroff and the members of his team. Sam.
This is part of the crew that actually built this monument. like to thank the city of Springfield. I'd like to thank the spirit of Springfield and all the donors who contributed to make this monument possible. I'll admit that when we were first asked to be involved in this project more than 3 years ago, I didn't fully understand or appreciate how significant and important this memorial would be. It was a privilege to be part of a historic and local project, and we tried to design a piece that was both modest in form, but clever in its use of light and shadow. There are a few key moments in the process of building this I'd like to share. I remember when this I-beam first arrived in our studio. We had seen it before, it was in a fire station nearby, but now to take responsibility for its safekeeping and to have such a piece of history in our workspace was not taken lightly. Unloading it with our forklift, I could sense its weight, both its physical weight, nearly 2,000 pounds of steel, but also its historic weight, the weight of the events that came before. There was a point during the fabrication where this I-beam needed to be stood up into its current position. There was something so meaningful and so special about taking a piece of history that for the last 15 years had been laying on its side, and now it was being returned to its original and proper upright orientation. A massive base was needed to support the beam, and there were holes that needed to be drilled out to fasten everything together. With each hole, even the metal chips were handled with respect and saved. Another turning point was when we began the engraving process of the names into the bronze plate. As the letters slowly began appearing, there was a new realization that these were not just names, but real people. People who gave their lives for others. It's a level of bravery and sacrifice that I've been thinking about since this project began. As we move toward completion of the project, flat and smooth bars and sheets of bronze and stainless steel have been transformed into this graceful and curving structure. Imbued with such meaning, I still struggle to find the right words. Each step along the way helped us all realize the significance and importance of the monument we're creating. But as I stand here before you this evening, I can say with honesty and humility that only now do I truly understand the significance and importance of this piece that we created. My hope for this memorial is that we'll bring people together. I think we all need a little more of that these days. To unite people in a common remembrance. It has certainly brought all of us together right here and right now. Over time, the bronze will change and tarnish. Park visitors will come and go, but the names of these brave souls will remain and be remembered forever. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.